On this edition of Native Report, we visit Sacred Stone Camp north of Cannonball, North Dakota, and learn about the grassroots efforts to stop the Dakota Access Pipe Line.
We meet Gay Kingman, one of Indian country's strongest voices for tribal rights and sovereignty over the past 30 years.
And we visit the Minnesota Indian Women's Resource Center. We also learn what we can do to lead healthier lives and hear from our elders on this edition of Native Report.
Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee-Mdewakanton Sioux community, the Blandin Foundation, and the Duluth Superior Area Community Foundation.
Welcome to the premiere episode of our 12th season of Native Report. I'm Rita Aspinwall.
And I'm Ernie Stevens. One of the largest gatherings of Native nations in recent memory has brought Native rights and issues to the forefront with one goal in mind: to halt the installation of the Dakota Access Pipe Line. Join us now as we visit Sacred Stone Camp and meet several supporters to this grassroots effort.
It is a commanding view from atop Facebook Hill overlooking Sacred Stone Camp just north of Cannonball, North Dakota. The Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota Oyate have lived and died on these lands for generations. This encampment is populated by water protectors and their allies standing together against the installation of the $3.8 billion Dakota Access Pipe Line.
It's a powerful feeling to be here. It's a great feeling to be here. But it's also sad for the reason why we've come. The Dakota Access Pipeline is a crude oil pipeline that's proposed to carry over 500,000 barrels of oil per day through the heartland of America, transporting crude oil from the Bakken oil shale all the way down to Illinois, and from there it's going to go off to Gulf Coast, to the East Coast for consumption, for fuel refinement. And what you see here is nothing short of just the continuation of the resistance as we as Indigenous peoples have been leading for over 500 years. Our enemy is fossil fuels. Our enemy is mega corporations. Our enemy is the system which promotes and perpetuates these infrastructure projects that go against our consent, that goes against our free will, goes against our sovereignty, and is a complete disregard for our rights as Indigenous peoples.
This is the land of Sitting Bull. And it was from this reservation that these youth started this whole thing. They took a petition and they ran it all the way to DC. But here, this is a peaceful camp. And I heard an older American Indian movement leader say that this is way bigger than Wounded Knee. Way bigger, because it was started by youth and there's no guns here.
Flags bearing the seals of federally recognized tribes line the main roadway. Supporters, native and non-native, came from across Indian country. Their protest against the pipeline is based on the concept of environmental justice.
Environmental justice really comes out of awareness that our natural world and human life are all interconnected. And so when you hurt the natural world, you're hurting humans. When you hurt the environment, you're hurting the people in a community, because we're all interconnected and you can't hurt one without hurting the other. And so environmental justice really rose out of a keen awareness and sensitivity that was interwoven with the racial justice. So it goes from Flint today to what's happening right here in Cannonball.
The people here have a legal right to do what they're doing to oppose the pipeline. And they're not doing it just for these people here, because they realize that there's 10 million people downstream that are going to be affected once this thing gives out.
Solidarity among supporters was evident as a group of canoers from the Puyallup Nation and other West Coast Native nations made their way up to a boat landing.
as they're coming up in the canoe and they're paddling, they're singing and they're praying for strength and for solidarity and for peace.
At its peak, we had over 3,000 people at this camp. We have over 190 different tribal nations all express solidarity. Even tribal nations whose entire economies are based on fossil fuel extraction. That's the absurd part. You have tribes like 3 affiliated tribes, Navajo Nation, Crow Nation, all throwing support behind the Standing Rock Sioux Nation. I'm calling them out. I ain't afraid. I'm calling them out because that's the next step in this. We're here for this fight against this pipeline, but we're also here for the greater fight to transition ourselves to a more renewable, sustainable world.
I am doing what many tribes across this whole United States is doing. It's a call to action. It's a peaceful protest to bring awareness about the economic justice or lack of it that's occurring here in this Standing Rock Reservation. I think what we can learn and what the country can learn is that we as Indian people, that we will always come together to support our brothers and sisters, no matter what reservation, what tribe they're from.
Whatever we do today is going to affect everybody in the future. And we have to be mindful of what we do and who we represent. I was nervous and scared just because I don't want anybody to get hurt and I don't want us to do something that's going to affect the future.
How can you explain to others about what's going on here? Somebody who isn't even...
There's no explanation. They just have to be here to experience it themselves.
Postscript. There is an ancient Dakota prophecy that states that the world will end when a great black snake crosses the land, desecrating sacred sites and poisoning the waters. For many here, that black snake is the Dakota Access Pipe Line. For now, progress has been halted by the Army Corps of Engineers, but for how long, that remains to be seen.
I'm Dr. Arnie Vainio, and today we're talking about COPD. COPD, or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, prevents with chronic shortness of breath, wheezing, cough, and sputum production, and is usually caused by cigarette smoking. COPD tends to get worse over time and is not fully reversible. COPD includes emphysema and chronic bronchitis. Lung diseases can be restrictive, which makes it hard to inhale, or obstructive, which makes it hard to exhale all air out of the lungs. Sometimes people with COPD get what we call exacerbations that can be mild or downright life-threatening. Suddenly the symptoms get much worse. This can be triggered by a variety of things, such as bacterial or viral illnesses, temperature and humidity extremes, or air pollution. Exacerbations can be scary because breathing becomes more difficult all of a sudden, and they can become more frequent as COPD progresses. What's worse is that the exacerbations themselves can make the underlying COPD worse. Diagnosing COPD can be difficult, and we need tests to rule out other diseases. These tests include pulmonary function testing, chest x-rays, oximetry, which is oxygen level testing, CT scans, and arterial blood gas testing. Not all tests are necessary in every case, and sometimes additional testing may be needed depending on test results. Treatments include bronchodilators, which are medicines to help open narrowed breathing passages. We also may prescribe steroids taken by mouth or inhaled. Steroids work to decrease inflammation and sometimes need to be given by injection if people are really sick. Steroids have lots of side effects and can raise blood sugars, decrease immune system function, and can make people really crabby and hungry. Antibiotics are often prescribed, especially if an exacerbation is caused by bacteria. Some folks with severe COPD need to be on oxygen to survive, and oxygen can cause problems in and of itself. Everyone with COPD should have a pneumonia vaccine and a flu shot every year. I have patients who are convinced they once got flu from a flu shot. This is simply not true. Influenza kills people in this country every year. If you have COPD, you need the flu shot every single year. You might have thought I was going to skip non-traditional tobacco use this time. The truth is, this is so important I saved it for last. Smoking kills people and it causes COPD, and once you have COPD, smoking makes it worse. I know it's easy to say quit smoking, and it's a lot harder to do it. But here's the truth. You need to stop smoking. If you can't do it for you, do it for your grandchildren. Gada abajatumen Anishinaabe moen, Jibamadzima guk Anishinaabe ijatwawan. We do these things to keep our language and our culture alive. The only way we'll do that is by keeping our elders with us for as long as possible. I'm Dr. Arnie Vainio, and this is Health Matters.
Gay Kingman has been at the forefront protecting tribal sovereignty since the 70s. Her career includes holding administrative positions with the National Congress of American Indians and the National Indian Gaming Association. She is currently the executive director for the Great Plains Tribal Chairman Association. Semi-retired, Gay is an advocate for Native nations and issues.
On most days, Gay Kingman can be found in her home office. But on this morning, the house is filled with sounds of family going about their business. For the past 50-plus years, Gay has worked in some fashion with Native communities and/or organizations. She began her career as a teacher.
My first job was teaching. I graduated and started teaching on the Pine Ridge Reservation in 1963 and was in education 25 years. And then tribes asked me to go into management, tribal affairs. So I've been in that for almost 27, maybe 28 years. The Creator's always been my guide, and I've always been taught that when the tribes ask you to do something, you do it. And the tribes asked me to go to DC, and at the time, the National Congress of American Indians was not in very good shape. And so I went in, and one of my fortes has been to put organizations back in fiscal order. And so we did that thanks to help from a lot of people.
It was while working for NCAI where Gay met Timothy Wapato. The two would marry in 1990. She and Tim were asked by the tribal leaders to form the National Indian Gaming Association.
I was living there anyway, and so we did, and we worked that for several years, and then we were constantly educating people on tribes and tribal governments and sovereignty and our treaties and why Indian tribes are political entities and have, not minorities. We have a political relationship. Indian gaming, when it first started, there was a lot of people that didn't want tribes to game, to have economic development.
Their greatest adversary during this time was billionaire businessman Donald Trump. It was in 1993 when federal legislation was introduced to deny Indian gaming.
Tribal nations are governments, and it's governmental gaming, not personal gaming, and that by law the tribes use gaming to develop their schools and their resources and senior citizen centers and all of this, whereas in Donald Trump's case or anything like that, it's personal, it goes into their pocket. The press would call periodically and they said, "Are you going to the press conference?" And Torricelli's introducing his bill. And so a lot of times it alerted us, and so we said, "Oh yeah, we're going to the press conference." And so we quickly developed our press release on why Indian gaming should be allowed and the benefits and everything. And we had a young lady working for us, and so we loaded her down with the press releases, and she went to the press conference.
This proved to be a turning point of sorts for NIGA. The media framed the story as NIGA versus Senator Torricelli and Donald Trump. NIGA went on a public relations blitz, but the telling moment was during a House Native American Affairs Subcommittee hearing.
And the worst part was the true story came out showing us, the racism.
If you look at some of the reservations that you've approved, you, sir, in your great wisdom have approved, I will tell you right now, they don't look like Indians to me. and they don't look like the Indians. Now, maybe we say politically correct or not politically correct. They don't look like Indians to me, and they don't look like Indians to Indians. And a lot of people are laughing at it, and you're telling how tough it is, how rough it is to get approved. Well, you go up to Connecticut, and you look. Now, they don't look like Indians to me, sir.
Thank God that's not the test of whether or not people have rights in this country or not, whether or not they pass your look test.
Depends whether, yeah, depends whether or not you're approving it, sir.
No, it's not a question whether I'm approving it. It's not a question whether I'm approving it. Mr. Trump, you know in the history of this country where we've heard this discussion before, they don't look Jewish to me.
Oh, really?
They don't look Indian to me. They don't look Italian to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a test for whether people could go into business or not go into business, whether they could get a bank loan. You're too black, you're not black enough.
After the hearing, the committee took action, and of course we had dubbed the legislation the Donald Trump Protection Act, because that's what it was. You know, he didn't like the competition of the other casinos opening up near him, but when the committee went, it died in committee. The legislation died in committee, and so it never resurfaced.
That moment was one of many victories over the 50 years of service that Gay has been part of. And always the teacher, she offers words of advice to the younger generation.
Well, I have 6 grandchildren, and now I have 6 great-grandchildren. And we're raising them to be, Indian, to be traditional, then also, though, to be able to exist and get along in the non-Indian world. And as elders, we need to continue informing those that come after us as to what happened, and that's our role as elders. But there's so many lessons that can be learned from those things. I mean, that you never give up, and that you put your story out there, and no matter who it is, if it's a David and Goliath story or whatever, you can win.
Right now, if I come upon another Crow speaker, I would speak Crow with them, regardless if there was non-speakers around us, because out of respect for him and for me, and if we spoke English to each other, it would be very uncomfortable. It's like a given that we have to speak Crow to get to each other. But our children now, they would understand it, but they don't speak it anymore. I think it's because of modern technology. Of course, you have your phones, you have your television. I think Head Start was very instrumental in doing away with some of our language. Now they're using that as a tool to bring it back, which is kind of ironic, but we got to do what we got to do, I guess, to keep it coming back. One of the tribal officials led a program to acquire an app, I guess, through technology. We're using the technology that has made us losing our language. Now we're using it to gain it back.
The Minnesota Indian Women's Resource Center has built a strong reputation for helping Native women, their families, as well as the homeless in the city of Minneapolis. They achieved their goals by having a staff committed to helping the 7th largest urban Indian community in the United States.
In the heart of Minneapolis, Minnesota, lies the Phillips neighborhood, home to a large urban Native American community. And it was here in 1985 when the Minnesota Indian Women's Resource Center gained nonprofit status.
Our focus is really on empowering, American Indian or Native American families. In the beginning, it was very focused on women because there weren't any services really that focused just on females. But now we've really expanded our services to address the American Indian women and their families component. So I look at what we do as healing. We try to address the needs of the people as they come in and try to figure out how we can best help. But all of our programming is grounded in culture. So when I go out into kind of the greater area and talk about our agency, I usually sum it up by saying our agency provides healing of the effects of colonization on our people. It started 31 years ago, and because of the need that 31 years ago, right, we're in the 80s, mid-80s, so the Indian Child Welfare Act has been passed, is not quite a decade old, so more service providers are working with families. There aren't as many Native-based service providers, and so a huge need as far as how do these providers work with the community sprung up. So this building has a lot of history of care and nurturing, and you can feel that.
The Native American population in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area is an estimated 35,000 men, women, and children. Annually, the Resource Center provides services to well over 2,000 individuals through one or more of its 14 direct service programs.
We have a holistic approach to healing because there are so many needs in the community. But in this building, the top 2 floors, we actually have 13 units of Section 8 housing, and it's family specific. So we house some female-led, some grandparent-led, some male-led homes, but they all have children, ranging from really little to teenagers. So when you first walked in, to the left was Nokomis and Dodd, which is grandmother's house, right? And that is our co-occurring C.O.P.D mental health program. And we do it in partnership with the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa. And it's an 18-month program. So it's a long-term program. Its biggest deficiency is the housing component because it's not inpatient and we don't have a residential component to it at this point. The mental health is a component of it as well. And so there's individual and group therapy, and not just with Nokomis, but throughout the agency. We have a domestic violence case manager here through a grant with Indian Health Services. That was pretty exciting because we were only one of 3 urban settings that received that funding. All the rest of it went to tribes. Programming we have, Nokomis, because of licensing, can only have an average of, I believe 16 or 18 at a time, but not all stay, right? So there's probably close to 30 in that program in a year. I'm less concerned with numbers because some programs get so obsessed with how many they're serving, they really don't do a good job with any one. So for us, it really comes down to each person that walks in the door, how are we meeting them at where they're at and their needs and helping to empower them so that they don't need these services anymore. And then that's a huge success.
As a nonprofit agency, the Resource Center receives its funding from a variety of sources: federal, state, city, and tribal, even private individuals.
We have some private donations, but that's definitely an area of development. And for tribal funding, there hasn't been enough money in Indian country, I think, long enough for people to be confident that it's not going to be gone soon. And so philanthropy in Native American communities is something that's really building now, and I think we're at a point where it's going to get more aggressive. But historically, that's been a low area. The agency can't do anything about ending homelessness in the cities, right? I wish I could build houses, but no one will give me money to do that, right? I wish I could do something about, making the opiate problem just go away. So maybe we can't address those social determinant things, the homelessness, the job scarcity, but we can build a strong sense of self within the family that come here so that when they're out there, they're stronger because they know who they are and they're proud. And we are guided by the community. I'm constantly checking myself to make sure that I'm not just doing things because I think it's best, because that's not the way it works. Come see our community, come participate, learn about the history in the state. You know, see why an agency like mine was necessary and why we continue to be necessary.
For more information about Native Report or the stories we've covered, look for us on the web at nativereport.org, on Facebook, and on Twitter. Thank you for spending this time with your friends and neighbors in Indian Country. I'm Rita Aspinwall.
And I'm Ernie Stevens. We'll see you next time on Native Report.
Rita Aspinwall is an enrolled member of the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa, and is an ICWA social worker with Fond du Lac Social Services. Ernie Stevens is a member of the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin and is a film and television producer. Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the C.O.P.D Sioux community, the Blandin Foundation, and the Duluth Superior Area Community Foundation.